On the morning of August 14, 2005, Helios Airways Flight 522 prepared for what should have been a routine journey. The Boeing 737-300, nicknamed Olympia, was scheduled to fly from Larnaca International Airport in Cyprus to Prague, Czech Republic, with a short stopover in Athens, Greece. On board were 115 passengers and 6 crew members, families, tourists, and professionals, all expecting an ordinary flight. None of them knew they were stepping into what would become one of the most chilling aviation disasters in modern history, later remembered as the ghost plane. Helios Airways Flight 522 was a scheduled international passenger flight from Larnaca, Cyprus, to Prague, Czech Republic, with a stopover in Athens, Greece, operated by a Boeing 737-300. Shortly after takeoff on August 14, 2005, Nicosia Air Traffic Control, ATC, lost contact with the pilots operating the flight, named Olympia. It eventually crashed near Grammatico, Greece, killing all 121 passengers and crew on board. It is the deadliest aviation accident in Greek history. An investigation into the accident by Greece's Air Accident Investigation and Aviation Safety Board, AASB, concluded that the crew had failed to notice that the cabin pressurization system was set to manual during takeoff checks. A ground engineer had set it to manual to conduct testing before the flight, but had most likely forgotten to restore it to auto afterward. This configuration was subsequently missed by the crew during their pre-flight checks. This caused the plane to gradually depressurize as it climbed, and resulted in everyone on board suffering from critical hypoxia, resulting in a ghost flight. The negligent nature of the accident led to lawsuits being filed against Helios Airways and Boeing, with the former also being shut down by the government of Cyprus the following year. The aircraft involved, manufactured by Boeing Commercial Airplanes in 1998, was a Boeing 737-300 registered as 5B DBY with serial number 29099. The aircraft was powered by 2 CFM International CFM56-3C1 engines. The aircraft had arrived at Larnaca International Airport from London Heathrow Airport at 1:25 local time on the day of the accident. It was scheduled to leave Larnaca at 9 o'clock and fly to Prague Ruzin International Airport, with a stop-off at Athens International Airport, where it was due to arrive at 10:45. In command was Captain Hans-Jürgen Merten, a 59-year-old German contract pilot hired by Helios for holiday flights, who had been flying for 35 years, previously for East German Airline Interflug from 1970 to 1991, and had accrued a total of 16,900 flight hours, including 5,500 hours on the Boeing 737. The first officer was Pampos Karalambis, a 51-year-old Cypriot pilot who had flown exclusively for Helios for the previous 5 years, accruing 7,549 flight hours throughout his career, with 3,991 of them on the Boeing 737. Luisa Vuteri, Greek, Lambda Omicron Upsilon Zeta Alpha Beta Omicron Upsilon Tau Rhoeta, a 32-year-old Greek national living in Cyprus, had replaced a sick colleague as the chief flight attendant. The aircraft lifted off from Larnaca at 9:07 a.m. local time. At first, everything seemed normal. But within minutes, a silent killer began to creep through the cabin. Loss of pressurization. The crew failed to recognize the warning signs. Oxygen masks should have deployed, but confusion in the cockpit led to a catastrophic chain of errors. When the aircraft arrived at Larnaca from London earlier that morning, the previous flight crew had reported a frozen door seal and abnormal noises coming from the right aft service door. They requested a full inspection of the door. The inspection was carried out by a ground engineer, who then performed a pressurization leak check. To carry out this check without requiring the aircraft's engines, the pressurization system was set to manual, but the engineer failed to reset it to auto upon completion of the test. Investigators later discovered that the pressurization system was set to manual instead of auto. This meant the aircraft could not properly regulate cabin pressure. As the plane climbed to 34,000 feet, the thin air began to overwhelm everyone on board. Hypoxia, oxygen deprivation, set in. Passengers slowly lost consciousness. The crew, too, became incapacitated. Imagine the eerie silence. 121 people, slumped in their seats, oxygen-starved, unable to move or cry out. The plane continued flying, guided only by autopilot. For nearly 2 hours, Flight 522 remained airborne, a ghostly vessel drifting across Greek skies. Fighter jets were scrambled to intercept. Pilots who approached the aircraft reported a haunting sight: passengers motionless, oxygen masks dangling, and the cockpit eerily still. Only one person showed signs of life: the flight attendant Andreas Prodromou, who had some training as a pilot. He managed to reach the cockpit, desperately trying to regain control. But by then, fuel was running low. After the aircraft was returned into service, the new flight crew overlooked the pressurization system state on 3 occasions: during the pre-flight procedure, the after-start check, and the after-takeoff check. During these checks, no one on the flight deck noticed the incorrect setting. The aircraft took off at 09:07 with the pressurization system still set to manual and the aft outflow valve partially open. As the aircraft climbed, the pressure inside the cabin gradually decreased. As it passed through an altitude of 12,040 feet, 3,670 meters, the cabin altitude warning horn sounded. The warning should have prompted the crew to stop climbing, but it was misidentified by the crew as a takeoff configuration warning, which signals that the aircraft is not ready for takeoff and can sound only on the ground. The alert sound is identical for both warnings. At 12:04 p.m., the engines flamed out from fuel exhaustion. The plane descended uncontrollably and crashed into a hillside near Gramatiko, Greece, exploding into flames. All 121 souls on board perished. In the next few minutes, several warning lights on the overhead panel in the cockpit illuminated. One or both of the equipment cooling warning lights came on to indicate low airflow through the cooling fans, a result of the decreased air density, accompanied by the master caution light. The passenger oxygen light illuminated when, at an altitude around 18,000 feet, 5,500 meters, the oxygen masks in the passenger cabin automatically deployed. Shortly after the cabin altitude warning sounded, Captain Merton radioed the Helios Operations Center and reported the takeoff configuration warning on and cooling equipment normal and alternate offline. He then spoke to the ground engineer and repeatedly stated that the cooling ventilation fan lights were off. The engineer, the one who had conducted the pressurization leak check, asked, "Can you confirm that the pressurization panel is set to auto?" However, Merton, already experiencing the onset of hypoxia's initial symptoms, disregarded the question and instead asked in reply, "Where are my equipment cooling circuit breakers?" This was the last communication with the aircraft before the captain and first officer fell unconscious. The tragedy shocked the world. It was the deadliest aviation accident in Greek history. Investigators concluded that poor maintenance, inadequate training, and human error had combined to create the disaster. The pressurization switch had been left in the wrong position after a previous maintenance check, and the crew failed to recognize the warning alarms. The official report emphasized the importance of crew awareness, proper training, and strict adherence to safety protocols. Helios Airways faced lawsuits, criminal charges, and eventually ceased operations. The haunting image of a plane flying silently with everyone unconscious inside remains one of aviation's darkest stories. It serves as a reminder of how small oversights can lead to catastrophic consequences. The ghost plane is not just a tale of tragedy. It is a lesson in vigilance, responsibility, and the fragility of human life at 34,000 feet. And that was the haunting story of Helios Airways Flight 522, the ghost plane. A tragedy that reminds us how fragile life can be, and how even the smallest oversight can ripple into unimaginable consequences. 121 souls lost, a silent aircraft drifting across the skies, and a lesson carved forever into aviation history. If the story moved you, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with others who love uncovering the mysteries of aviation. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the most chilling and fascinating events in history. And let me know in the comments what part of this story struck you the most. The eerie silence of the passengers, the desperate fight of Andreas Prodromou, or the lessons learned afterward. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, the skies hold stories far beyond what meets the eye. This was the Ghost Plane. Thank you for watching.